Hello, Sitaram. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. And let me
Well, let
welcome
me.
all our listeners, both in Trinidad and Tobago and worldwide. And let me welcome Steve, who is with us again this morning. I want to thank him, and I also want to thank the team, the operators, Francis and Jason, and all the people who has been doing the research and presenting these very valuable lead-up videos to the program. Actually, the videos contain so much valuable information. I'm hoping that people are paying attention. And I want to let our callers know that this is an interactive program. You can call the station, the numbers are on your screen, 663 2235 and 663 1027. You may call, and if you have questions, you for me and Steve, of course, you can pose those questions. Or if you have any brief comments about alcoholism and drug addiction, you may also make your comments. So this morning again, I know it has been a very hectic time out there. The carnival is finished, and I am still recovering from the all the Sahara dust. You know, that's one of the reasons we couldn't do the program last week because I was a little bit under the weather, but I'm feeling much better today. And I know I just want to send out a warning to all those people who have respiratory problems and so on. You still need to be careful out there in the open. You take your precautions. So let me welcome Steve. Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Steve.
good morning, Mr. Dwarka, and I share the same sentiments you have for the listeners far and wide, and also for the technical team. Thank you very much for having me back.
Right. And I know that in some of you who are joining us for the first time, Steve, this morning, Steve was with us on a previous program. Steve is a member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Actually, he's the chairman of this Circle of Reflection online AA group. Um, and he will probably tell us a little bit about it when he comes on. And Steve has been sober for quite some time and has a lot of experience in recovery and in the fellowship as well. So we are happy to have you here this morning, Steve. I also know that AA had a lot of sponsored activities over the weekend. I had the good fortune of attending one of those meetings myself at Aranjuez. There was a marathon meeting that was hosted by the Northern Intergroup. And I am aware that there was a marathon meeting held in South at St. Madeleine by the Back to Basics Intergroup of South Trinidad. You want to, I know, I understand that you attended. You want to tell us a little bit about that, Steve?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. It there's a saying. Good morning again, everyone. There's a saying that we use in the fellowship there. We are not a glum lot.
Correct.
That means that even though we have ceased from drinking and in recovery, as you stated, we still we are integrated back in society. Whereas we have a social, the disease of alcoholism is a bit antisocial to some. So we need to be social. And why not socialize with our own peers? So that being said, over the carnival weekend there that has been experienced has shown that these periods of holiday events that were once good drinking occasions, they continue to exist. Carnival will also continue to exist, and the Christmases, and the birthdays, and the Easters, and for some, every weekend, like myself, they continue to be there. So the fellowship has decided, way before my time, to occupy ourselves during this period, not to isolate, but to occupy ourselves and create a bit of a safe haven, a conducive environment for recovery and also fellowshipping, which is an important part, a quite important part. Again, because of the integration. And over the weekend there, I was quite happy to attend, and as you mentioned there, the Circle of Reflection online AA group. We are a group that meets on a nightly basis, and because of the platform that we use, some of us would never have met in face.
Right.
So this provided a double, quite great opportunity for that, and it happened, and it happened. I was glad to be there to witness it, and uh, it happened in an AA environment where we went out as a group, but a small part of a greater whole, which is quite clear. As you stated, alcoholism is island wide. So the fellowship has to be island wide also. And various other intergroups and so on and entities share the same sentiments, and they too would have had their activities. But one of the standout points would have been when I looked across, I looked at the younger members. And by younger, I mean those who have now started their journey, some who have been there a while, and so on and so forth. And they were all quite hugging each other, and there was a love. There was an understanding. Hey, you look taller. Hey, you look younger. Hey, where's so and so? And that within itself was worth it. That was worth it, everything. And then the opportunity to hear them and see them. And my favorite part came because there was a lot of food. There was a lot of food available. So I extended this. I know we have some of them listening here. I again thank the Back to Basics chairman and his entire committee for putting together such a great event, a wonderful event for us. And the great thing about it, or one of the things about it, is it was open to the public, as most AA meetings are.
And the point here, Steve, is that, and like you said, we are always going to have holidays. And from my work in the field, I can tell you, I have the experience of knowing that a lot of people over the holidays, they tend to become lonely, especially those people who do not belong to a support group like AA and so on, and who are trying to tough it out and make it on their own. Holidays can become a very difficult challenge for them because you're sitting you belong to a family or a group, and you see everybody else drinking, having a good time, and it's natural that your mind will go back to those experiences that you have had, and there's a tendency to start feeling a sense of self-pity. And self-pity is one of those things that has sent a lot of people back to drinking, feeling sorry for yourself. So that this is one of the reasons AA has seen it fit. In fact, in the community in which I live, Felicity, there's a group here, Felicity Serenity, a group that has been running marathon meetings over the Christmas, for the whole Christmas day, right into Boxing Day, for the last 25 years. And it has been a great success. And yes, you are right. People in recovery, there's a lot of misconception out there, Steve. People who are drinking actively now, they think that it is impossible to have a good time without a drink. They firmly, and I used to, because a person in recovery myself, until I realized now I know what it is to have a good time because I am sober. I could leave the occasion knowing where I went, what I had, who I met, and all of that. So that we have had a successful carnival. I thank God that there was not much incidents of violence and all of that, thanks to the protective services. But we also had so far a lot of people fellowshipping and so on. I have not heard anyone coming back to me saying, they had a relapse. Well, it's a little bit early, but I'm saying this to say that going forward, people in recovery, they need to be aware that when you have holidays, not only public holidays, birthday parties, your birthday, friend's wedding, all of these occasions, a day out with the family at the beach, all of these are occasions when one has to be very alert, because these occasions had become triggers for a lot of people. What are your thoughts on this, Steve?
True, true. Good point. We don't know what all our triggers are. I certainly don't know mine. It could be as simple as hearing a sound on the radio, or it could be an environment. Christmas, especially, used to be, it's an emotional, where loneliness settings, and most persons who suffer from alcoholism, they suffer low self-esteem also. Not all, not all, most people. So as you said before, loneliness is something that is dangerous. It is not the recommended. And the thing about loneliness is that we could be in a crowd and still be lonely.
Correct.
A lot of alcoholics, though, are introverts. Not all are the outdoor types and the loud type like myself.
Mm.
A lot of alcoholics are introverts, so they tend to go inside, even within a room there. So there is the danger of that also. But seeing that, as I said before, I commend the members who were there before me to have the foresight to create these safe zones, as I like to call them. And to touch on a point you made there, our group, the group that I belong to, we have a lot of young members, and probably around Tuesday or so, and even on Monday, there was the hint of there was a bit of a panic there. But because of the again the format we use, and we recommend at this group there, we recommend telephone therapy.
Right.
As soon as the urges starts in the mind. This is a disease of the mind. The urge starts in the mind, and I say this to them repeatedly. As soon as that thought to drink or use comes, telephone therapy, call someone, call myself, call somebody else. And that would have been utilized by some of the younger ones. In fact, I was quite amazed at the innovation of these young people that they have created, Mr. Dwarka, they have created using the technology available to a check-in system where they message one another, they WhatsApp message one another, probably every 3 hours or so. My name is so and so, and I'm sober now. And that is quite innovative and effective. I bought into it and I started doing it. So we have to be creative with a disease that never rests. Our disease has become creative. And going back to the emotions, we experience and recommend that if you need to go somewhere where there's alcohol and you have now started your journey, ideally, the ideal thing to do is avoid it if you can.
Right.
But the world isn't a perfect place, and you may have to attend. Remember, as I said before, we cannot be isolated. We have punished our families long enough. We need to attend certain things.
Right.
Take along an AA member. Take along somebody who is in sobriety. Again, that may not always be possible. But what you can do is check in on a regular basis. Again, technology has assisted sobriety and abstinence so much. So all these plans, especially, I would say to a newcomer, do especially their first carnival or so, do not go. The saying that we have, don't go in the butcher stall if you do not want blood on your white shirt.
Right.
That simply means stay away from sticky people, places, and things. Emotions, again, could sail to the top, and a memory, one of great joy, one of great fun, could form as a trigger.
And Steve, I have come across many a time cases where people think that they need to prove themselves. As soon as they stop for a few days, they want to go and challenge themselves. They want to go and, boast and brag to their friends, look, I have stopped and nobody could make me drink. And there's a danger in that. What do you think?
Exactly that. There's nothing to prove. There is nothing to prove here. You know, we don't wear our sobriety as medals. Whatever we do, in fact, we're supposed to be sober. But
Right.
it isn't anything we are not. We don't float above the rest of the world.
Right.
So becoming cocky, it's also dangerous. As I said before, self-esteem, it's a symptom of disease. It's all one of the other symptoms. Our ego, most of us are egomaniacs.
Mhm.
And that ego needs to always be deflated. I myself in particular, you know, these days I have it. I want to say these days I've learned through the recovery program to keep it a bit under control. But it gets there. It gets there rather quickly. So there's nothing to prove. You see, when I am, as you said, why would I try to tempt fate?
Right.
I've gotten away by the skin of my teeth with my life.
Right.
Should I go back there to tempt it?
You know, and as you say that, I've heard from people in recovery in AA, you know, another interpretation of the word ego is easing God out when we indulge in the ego. And I have looked carefully at the 12 steps. And again, the 12 step that was enumerated right at the beginning of the program by the staff at the TV station. A lot of people, some people call it the program of recovery. Some people refer to it as the 12 step. In fact, sometimes people use the term interchangeably. You know, instead of saying they're going to A, they say they're in a 12 step program. And a lot of people wonder about what these 12 steps are. But, you know, it is a prescription for living that not only people who are in recovery practice, but a lot of people who do not have a drug problem have found, indeed, I have found that it is a good prescription for living for anyone, you know, so that practicing the principles of the fellowship is really, you know, stopping. There's a formula to stop, you know, avoid the first drink or first drug or first smoke one day at a time. But the whole problem is not about stopping, it is about staying stopped, and not only staying stopped, but being happy, comfortable, and peaceful staying stopped. It must not be a struggle. So that this is what the program is about. Now, I know that a lot of people, coming back to people who challenge themselves, you know, that's a natural inclination to show the people around us, you know, that now we have control. But you know, I remember a little saying from the good book, the Bible, when the devil told Jesus on the mount, you know, you are the Son of God. Why don't you jump and ask the angels to come and catch you, and you will prove once and for all that you are the Son of God and you have the powers. And what did Jesus says? No, that you should not tempt the Lord thy God. In the case of people in recovery, to go and sit in the shop, you may do it once, and I've seen this happen in my own experience working with alcoholics. They go once, twice with the friends, the same old friends, lime in, and they're not drinking. But what you will find is that yes, there are some days you can do it, but there will come that day when you're in a bad space emotionally. You may have just had a quarrel at home, and you come and you will never realize when your hand reach out and grab that glass, and that is all it takes to start in fact, the relapse would have started from the time you started to go back online with your old friends. And in the lead up to the program, that was one of the cautions that was given, you know. That's one of the signs of relapse, going back with your old friends, your drinking friends, and so on. So that kind of behavior leads to complacency generally, and it sets the basis for relapse. But I want to say though, yes, also at the beginning of the program, it was mentioned that relapse is part of recovery. And I've seen so many people, in fact, they estimated, the researchers, that almost 80% of people who start off the journey of recovery may relapse once or twice. So I'm saying that to say that one should not be ashamed if it happens, But if it happens, that is really an opportunity for that person to be able to learn where they went wrong, what they were taking for granted. So that I know in age, Steve, you would have seen a lot of people who, in their contributions, would have described, being relapsing several times and eventually making it. And as I say that, I remember even one of the founders of the fellowship had quite a number of relapses before he eventually made it. What are your thoughts, Steve?
Right. So in the fellowship here, we have an open door policy.
Right.
And that door isn't only open once and closed. I myself personally, I have never relapsed. I've in my experience, I've heard enough stories, and in fact, they would have been helpful to me in trying to. There's always a lesson there.
Yeah.
Whenever something happens, I always try to take the be it good or bad or in between. I always try to look at the lesson there and what could I learn from it. There's no lost cause. We don't consider anybody a lost cause or hopeless. That is words that is taboo for me to use. So no one is judged here. There ought to be make it a teachable moment. What we do is try to encourage, never discourage. That isn't our policy here. So we look at someone who probably would have gone back out as probably this wasn't there. There's a term we use called rock bottom. One has to hit their rock bottom where there is no deeper to go, and the only direction is up. I've found that. So when one has to experience that themselves, to fully get it, to fully become willing.
I just want to remind Steve, I just want to remind all our listeners that the phone lines are open, and of course, you have an ideal opportunity because we have someone from the Fellowship of AA who has been in recovery with us this morning, and we both will be able to respond to any questions that you have. Feel free to call and ask, or if you have any comments, if you're a person in recovery out there following us on the program, you may want to call and comment. And let me, at this juncture, say this program is being recorded and it will be posted on Facebook, on YouTube, soon after the close of the program. So those of you who would like to go back and refer to anything that was said, or you want to invite a friend to listen to the program in their own time, in their own privacy, you will be free to do that. The program is also aired again at 10 p.m. tonight on the same radio and television station. So yes, back to you, Steve. You were saying, sorry to cut you there.
No problem. I just want to roll back a little bit to something you said there, pertaining to the recovery program. It was as you mentioned there.
Yes.
At the start of the program, and abstinence would have its rewards. At first, that is all when I entered into the sobriety. Abstinence was all that I could have afforded. Anything else, I really weren't able to digest it. And that's good. That would have its rewards. But there came a time when I asked what's next. The thought set in that probably this is a boring life. This life without alcohol, I was looking at my friends there and they continue to have this good time. And I didn't want to go back. But then when I looked forward, the direction or the horizon wasn't so bright. And it was at that point in time, but I stayed sober. The thought never occurred to me to drink. I've heard enough at that point in time to realize the direction or the downward spiral. Then it was suggested that I got a sponsor and start the recovery program or get into service. I took the latter at first. I got into service. And service in our fellowship means anything from listening to someone,
right,
doing the minimal duties. I wouldn't go through. We have minimal organization as anything is needed to ensure that things run smoothly. I wouldn't go into much detail as to the type of service, But I got into that with a passion. And you know that was me building a foundation. And that is quite important for anybody who is in any recovery to build that foundation. I was finding out about myself. Another byproduct of alcoholism, not in a positive way, is losing oneself.
Correct.
So I needed to find out about Steve, you know, who am I really? This false person who were putting on fronts and, you know, just adapting to who was around the table and stuff. This person was fake. Even without the bear being the best at it, it was still fake. It wasn't the truth. So I had to find out about myself. And all these times giving service and staying sober and speaking and listening, I was finding out about myself, and a lot of it, though I didn't like the person I had become. I didn't set out to be this person, but here it was because of the disease of alcoholism. I had become this guy. I had become this boy, not a man. I hadn't matured. I had aged, but I hadn't matured. I was making childlike decisions, and this was affecting other people. So this recovery program, eventually when I got to it, procrastination again, another byproduct of the disease. You know, it's so much byproduct. And one can only find out this whilst after they have stayed sober some. So I got into the recovery program with a guide. A sponsor is a guide. A nice example I like to use to the newer ones. Imagine yourself going to the pitch lake there. You wouldn't go and walk all over the place, otherwise they end up in who knows where you'll end up. So you would take a guide who's been there before.
Right.
So that sponsor is there to guide you through the recovery program, not give you financial advice or marital advice or professional advice. That person has gone through with a sponsor, so that person is there. Reading the literature, listening, attending meetings, regurgitating the stuff does not make recovery. There are certain steps and it has to go through a certain process. So again, abstinence, it has its own rewards, but recovery to me afforded me serenity. And that serenity is proportional to my sobriety.
I want to go back to something you said, and very interesting, and give my own take on it. Especially for people I have found in working in with alcoholics and addicts in recovery, for people, both men and women, who may have been introduced to drugs very early. They have to be completely rehabilitated. Now, there are those people who may have started using drugs later on in life, and those need just to be rehabilitated. Let me make the distinction here. Rehabilitated is mean having to learn appropriate habits. Habilitated is to be reminded you already had the habit, but you strayed from it. So I'm just to become a little more detailed about that. I have found from my own experience, and the research supports this, that people who start using drugs very early in their life, like in their teenage, like a lot of, especially people who use marijuana, we have found, and start maybe from 13, 14, and while they're still in college. And some people are introduced to even alcohol early. Um, what happens when you start using drugs early, rather than learning normal coping skills that the average person would have learned, a person who was not exposed to drugs, you know in teenage, a lot of us now have to transition from a child to an adult. And during that transition, we have to learn certain coping skills. We have to learn how to resolve conflict. We have to learn how to solve problems. We have to start learning to take responsibility. These are things that would have probably been done for us before by our parents. But if at that time we started using drugs, Steve, we started, rather than learning these coping skills, for necessary for living later on, we would have started to use alcohol and drugs to escape having to deal with them. And as a result, when you said you felt like you were a boy again, it reminded me of that because, yes, it's a kind of retrograde step, even as an adult. Once we start drinking, we start using alcohol to feel happy, to feel sad, to deal with disappointment, to deal with everything, just to exist, so that we don't use any appropriate coping skills at all. So that is one of the perpetuating causes for drug addiction. The perpetuating reason is that we have poor coping skills. As a result, we develop very low self-esteem. Even if we had a certain good, satisfactory level of self-esteem growing up as a young man, that could deteriorate. So that this is why just putting down the glass and stopping the drinking, yes, we can use the formula, avoid the first drink one day at a time. We could stop the drinking. But now we have to deal with coping with mature and adult issues. And what would happen when we face with these challenges? Our mind will naturally go back to, boy, what this is how I used to cope in the old days, by escaping into drugs, by taking drugs. So this, to my mind, makes the case for the 12-step program, because I've looked at the 12-step program and it is really a prescription. It is very effective in helping people to develop coping skills and to develop discovery, like you said, Steve, discovering your true self and not shortchanging your life. What has been your experience in this regard, Steve?
Before I go on, could I just say
Sure.
welcome and good morning? We have some listeners there from all the way from New York, New Jersey. They logged in just now. I just want to remind them that you can utilize the numbers there that Mr. Dwarka has up, or you can message, and you can message me if you
Yeah.
so wish, and your questions will be asked on it. Thanks for your support. Yeah, going back to the question there. Rightly so. Rightly so. There was a stagnation of growth.
Right.
And then came the realities of life when I started to stay sober. Everything was great when you look through the eyes of intoxication, when you look with that eyes. The world is always great. And if it isn't, well, I'll take another drink and make it so.
Right.
I measure happiness by the amount of liquid in the bottle.
Mm.
So that can be easily replenished.
Right.
But then came no alcohol anymore. So how do I face all these? And it could be a bit overwhelming at first. But our program has dealt with that. It says that we measure time in 1 day at a time. That is the 24 hours is we only stay sober for 24 hours, and it will add up. So we again, one of the byproducts of alcoholism, something that sits very high on my list personally, is overthinking and over worrying and everything that goes with the over.
Mm.
So what we try to avoid is allowing that mind to go extend too far in the future. I can only control certain things. Certain things will be left up to other people, especially when it comes to direct dealing with another person. I cannot change anyone. That is something that is so revealing to me, that had so much information to myself, because I tried to change everybody and how I wanted them to be. So having faced this reality of life and the wreckage of my past, as I look at it, and wanting to pull back the financial hole and the family hole and everything it became overwhelming. Again, attending meetings, we do at these meetings, we just don't talk alcohol, or rum. We talk life. Some of the greatest life lessons I've heard is within these rooms.
Correct.
Nothing to do with alcohol. I've heard how to troubleshoot my car engine. Oh, oh, how I've heard how a tailor operates. I've heard real life stories. One of the important factors is I've heard that we have female alcoholics.
Right.
I've heard that women suffer too. I've heard from the other side of the coin, the family of the alcoholic, they too have a part to play. You know, I've heard so many things. I don't think I've ever exposed myself to such a wide array of information as before. So all these topics almost nightly that you could attend a meeting and get some additional information as to how to live this life and not be overwhelmed. Obviously, it takes a process. It does not, everything does not fall back into place, but time, effort, and some good elbow grease and make yourself open-minded. It just will.
You know, Steve, a lot of alcoholics, they think they alone suffer like that. And because of the stigma associated with alcoholism and drug addiction, a lot of people don't discuss the problem with anybody else. In fact, they don't even want the people close to them. This is the insidious nature of addiction, you know. Because remember, you're growing up, you want to impress your mother and your father and your siblings and all of them because of this sibling rivalry, so that to 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 the best extent a person is trying to keep their problems with drug and their inability to control and so on is secret. At first they lie to themselves, they don't even want to admit to themselves they have a problem, but even after years of suffering like that, they may come to the understanding that they need to do something about it. But even then, they don't want to discuss it with people close to them, let alone strangers and therapists and all of that. So that, you know, going to an AA meeting, I know I've heard of people and I've referred people to AA meetings who did not think that they were alcoholics. In fact, there's one or two instances, that classic cases where I've heard of, you know, relatives who took someone to an AA meeting thinking that person needed to stop, only to realize they had a problem as well. And although the relative did not stop, they ended up staying stopped. You know, so that it is such a wonderful program and so effective. In fact, Alcoholics Anonymous right now, I know, can be found in, I think it's 124 countries in the world. And it now it's online. And as I say that, Steve, you know, we fast coming up on time. When you're talking about these things, time seems to run out. But you want to tell us a little bit about your group, the Circle of Reflection, online AA group, and how one can, you know, access the group and so on?
Sure. Yeah, and I totally understand the constraints at time. Some of the because of the platform that we use at Circle of Reflection online group, and it isn't. There are two types of available to us in our country, which is online, and then there's the physical meeting. Both of them, the object is to do the same thing.
Right.
It's to create that as you described it. So one of the things, denial is the enemy of recovery. And not so the individual who's suffering from, but sometimes the family of, or those close to, can be in more denial than the individual themselves. And they would have tried various forms of fixing that person, for want of a better word. And really and truly, the most effective one, not the only one, the most effective one, is speaking to a group of your peers, people who understand, where you can open out. Simply because of the points there that you identify. I don't want to seem less than.
Right.
My siblings are successful, so what's wrong with me? Am I mentally ill? Yes, that point, but not so. Am I another humorously so, but it is real. Somebody do you something. There's always the spiritual aspect that
Right.
is always touched on there. So at the Circular Reflections we online AA group there, we have nightly meetings. And because of the platform that we have here, we operate under, one can come in and listen. We have what we call an open meeting. You can come in and listen. Aliases, AKAs are required. No one, it's not a requirement, it can be utilized. No one there really has to identify to anything. And attending an AA meeting does not make you an alcoholic. I should say that. It's to get information. And anything you do with regards to information gathering, it's a positive. So attend if you wish to. You can attend the meeting. It's on a nightly basis, 7 p.m. You can come, you can sit, listen. You can best before you judge, attend. Come and see what we have there. You will be, I guarantee you will have information pertaining to alcoholism, pertaining to life, pertaining to recovery, and anything according to that. We also create an opportunity for the person who is newer or who is investigating after the meeting, where the room is whittled down a bit, and we have an after meeting that a question can be asked, so one can also inquire as to any concern that they have. We have that opportunity also. And again, as a further assistance, members openly furnish their numbers. They provide their numbers so that you could also have their one-on-one. Ironically, Mr. Dwarka, while I speaking to you here, and I think it having a feedback, and I apologize for that. A new person was just messaging with regards to attending the meeting tonight,
Right.
asking the link and so forth. So that link, it can be provided by you. Anyone who's listening, you can contact Mr. Dwarka. There are the numbers, and he could provide it. I am also, my number could be made available by him. Or anyone who wishes to, and that link could be made available. We have created the link in such a way that it's a one touch, and you enter straight into the meeting. Again, I repeat, no questions asked. Because as the name suggests, anonymity, it's quite, we hold that in high standard. And there's no need for any explanation. There's no need for you to explain anything or for one to give too much information. You share information as you are comfortable with. And because of the app, as you see here rightly, one does not even have to put on their camera to be identified. So there's no fear. There's no fear there. There's just hope.
It's totally confidential, and of course, members are reminded, I think, in most meetings that whatever you hear, whoever you see there, you keep it to yourself because they're all there for the same reason. Again, I want to thank you very much, Steve, for agreeing and giving your time and your experience in the fellowship. I know that AA, you people in AA, you have made a promise to yourself that whenever anyone anywhere reaches out for help, you want the hand of AA to be there. And for that, you all have always, in fact, one of the hallmarks of AA is really carrying the message. That's the primary purpose of the whole fellowship. And you have been doing that for us and reaching out to all our brothers and sisters, not only in Trinidad and Tobago. I know people all up in the United States and all over the world, they pay attention and they relate to this program. So I want to thank you. I want to also thank the TV Jagriti and the operators there for providing us the information and this platform to share this information and to let all our listeners know that if you have any questions, comments, I could be reached at 671-3040. That is 671-3040 after the program. And I'd be only too happy to give you the information, the reference numbers, the ID numbers for the meetings. There are meetings tonight, every night, and there are also meetings worldwide where a person can attend at any time of day. There are meetings online as we speak. So I want to let all our brothers and sisters know, look, it's not a shame to admit and accept that you have a problem. It would be a failure, though, for you to know you have a problem, know that there's help, and you are not willing to accept it. So I want to thank you, Steve, and I want to thank the radio station, the television station, and to remind listeners and viewers that this program will be aired again at 10 p.m. tonight. And of course, it is going to be posted on YouTube and Facebook in a few minutes. So thank you all again, and thank the management of Radio and TV Jagriti for providing this airtime free of charge as a community service to all our listeners in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you all again very much, and see you next week, Thursday.
Thanks for having me. God bless us all in sobriety.
Thank you.